The work session of the Annapolis City Council for Thursday, May 21st, 2026 will be called to order at 2:04 p.m. And at this time, will everyone willing and able please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Attorney Cooper Smith, will you please present the first item on the agenda?
Yes. The first item on the agenda is ID 7926, discussion on budget amendments created by the Finance Department from ideas and recommendations submitted by the council.
Thank you. We have before us, obviously, the finance team. Thank you all for joining us. In a moment, I'll ask you to just introduce yourselves, all four of you at once, and then if you want to, I will, Alderman Huntley, as Chair of Finance, I'll turn it over to you to start the discussion how you want to. I know we have an agenda laid out that we've all seen, so thank you for doing that in advance. So please introduce yourselves, and then we'll turn it over to Alderman Huntley.
Joel Palacal, Acting Director of Finance. We'll work our way down from this way down.
Suzanne Flaherty, Grants Accountant.
Darren Johnson, Senior Budget Analyst.
Capri Turner, Budget Analyst.
Okay, thank you all for joining us and all your hard work to get us to this point. Alderman Huntley?
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just give another shout out to the budget team. I said this to them when we talked, I guess it was yesterday, but it's like they're playing with the man down and you wouldn't even notice it. So these guys have just been doing an incredible job. Thank you so much. Also, congrats to our new city manager. Happy to have you. All right, so folks, as I laid out in my email last night, the first thing we're doing is just walking a little bit through the rest of our process for the budget and when that's going to happen. So we're having our meeting today. Next step is that we still need to do a little bit of work, I think, on grouping the amendments into categories: one-time funds, recurring operating capital, and exempt. If you take a look at our working spreadsheet, which I know normally we try really hard to make sure that the public has access to whatever we're talking about. I've had a couple folks ask me for that today. It was intentional that this is not published because these amendments are not final, but for any members of the public watching, we will have, in advance of our June 1st meeting, the final amendments that we'll actually be voting on published. So that to say that we're still working a little bit on making sure that all of these amendments are in the right categories. But we do have the operating recurring, the exempt, one-time funding, capital, and that's it. Tomorrow, we intend to send out a set of spreadsheets. Each council member will receive a spreadsheet with these amendments on them, in which you will have a column that you can mark each one with a score about how much you care about it. The scoring system I came up with the city manager, with the finance team, is from -1 to 3, meaning -1 is, I'm opposed to this. Even if it were free, I wouldn't want you to spend money on it. 0 is neutral. 1 is, I like it. 2 is, I really like it, I'm strongly supportive of this. And 3 is, this is one of just a few top priorities. The point is that you really do want to spread these out. Don't put everything as a 3. Don't put everything as a 0 either. That would be kind of boring. But be able to express your opinions so that we can use them to order the list that we later vote on. Keep in mind, this is not voting. This is just a straw poll. This is just for us to get a sense of where everybody is. So the hope is that you will be able to submit that by the end of the day on Monday. I know Monday is a holiday. I also know all of us sitting up here on the dais have been known to work on a holiday or two. So we're giving everybody the whole weekend, the whole long weekend, to work on that. So that then the budget team on Tuesday, when they come back, can have all of our responses. On Tuesday, then we will have that, use that information to inform an ordered set of spends and potentially, depending on what we're going to talk about later, the pay-fors. Now, this is really the point of our discussion here is we've been talking mostly about spends. Everybody wants to spend money. That's a lot more fun than cutting money. And so, I don't know, sometimes I have a good time cutting money, but that's generally the case. And so what we've been trying to do with this new system this year is really work through how should we most appropriately account for the trade-offs that we are making in the budget, while also being fair among folks having different levels of experience, while also making sure that it's not arbitrary, right? We want to account for the real trade-offs, that everything has to come from cutting somewhere else, but also something that we really all agree should be spent shouldn't get paired up with something that no one wants to cut from. So we're trying to create a more equitable system on that. So the decision point for all of us today that I want us to talk about in this next 10 minutes is really whether we should go through by voting on all of the pay-fors one by one by one, and then vote on all of the spends, which is the city manager's preference from our conversations, or that we would have an ordered list of all the spends based on your straw poll, have an ordered list of the pay-fors based on what the city manager and the finance committee think is going to be most painful, and pair those up so that you are able to effectively understand, all right, if I spend this money on a sidewalk, I have to cut this from whatever other position. So that's really all of the background I think we need. Happy to take any questions on the process before we jump into discussing which one of those two options we should take. And then obviously on June 1, we would vote on it all.
Last thing you said?
On June 1, we would vote. Right, I didn't mention that step, but that's kind of the most important step.
Alderman Savage, I think you saw your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I didn't entirely follow all that, sorry, but I think I got the gist of it.
It's easier in writing.
Yeah, I'll take another look at that. But as far as, I would, my preference would be that we separate out the expenses and the pay-fors, just because I think you may have some people who vote against an expense that they otherwise would support, but maybe they don't like to pay for. I just think separating them is going to provide for a bit of a healthier, but also more clear distinction on what people are going to have a preference for when they rate them. And so were you asking if you want us to do the ratings by close of business Monday, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's just on spends, not on pay-fors.
That's just the ratings on the spends.
Correct, right.
Okay.
Deputy City Manager Buckland, we're all going to have to
yes.
get readjusted to the new tunnel. And echo welcome to City Manager Yolanda Lewis. Deputy City Manager Buckland, can you chime in with your preference and how you think we should be proceeding?
So, as Alderman Huntley said, this is a conversation we've been in for a little while. In the past, and to Alderman Savage's point, we've had a situation where the amendments are neutral amendments. You're voting for both. Here's places where we're adding funds, and here's places where we're taking funds away, and the net effect of that amendment is zero. And I understand the value of sort of staying budget neutral amendment by amendment, but there is an inherent equivalence that doing that kind of pairing creates that's not necessarily true, right? Folks may be very interested in this particular thing, and I'd trade other things for this, but I don't want to trade this thing for it. So my suggestion had been, do the votes on here are the places we're going to cut. That tells us how much we have to work with. here are the things then that we want to add. To Alderman Huntley's point, though, there is a little bit of, by separating it that way, the sort of value of how much am I willing to, how much do I want this thing and what am I willing to give up for it is harder to put together. And I think that's why this discussion is here, is how does setting up the voting, how does that help the council have clarity on the choices that it's making, right? Because that, at the end of the day, that's what you're doing, right? You're making choices about the budget. And so I think the point of the question is to get a sense of what will help you best understand the trade-off that you're making in budgetary terms, whether that's item by item, or let me gauge how much I'm willing to cut, and when we reach our pain point, then that's what we've got, and now we get to vote on other things. I think both of those are reasonable things. I don't know if that helps you. Yeah.
Comment?
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping to hear other people's perspectives on which one they would like. I think I might have a way to thread the needle, but I'd like to hear what other folks think about just between these two options before I throw that out on the table.
Alderman Thorpe?
I think at the end of the day, we've got to pick the process that gets us to an answer, and to simplify it as much as possible has a benefit. So it's kind of like democracy. It's not perfect, but it's the best solution. So if we could prioritize spends and prioritize cuts, and I think to Alderman Savage's point, separate the two. So for instance, I might want to cut something to pay for something, but nobody else wants to cut it. It shouldn't affect what we're looking to spend, I think, which is what you were saying, right? And so I think there's real value in that. And at the end of the day, what our tough thing is if we decide we're going to add $7 to the budget, we got to figure out a way to cut $7 of the budget. If we can only get to 5, then we've got to revisit the spend and get it to 5. If we get it to 6, then we got to, that's how I see this playing out, in that's how you make things competitive with each other, which I think is the whole goal that we've talked about. So that would be my thought.
Yeah, I think you just jumped ahead to what I was going to suggest for threading the needle there, which is to essentially take the option that Deputy City Manager Buckland suggested, but then be able to jump back, right? If we go through the list of pay-fors and then we go through the list of spends, we get to a point where we say, all right, we can't vote on any more spends, then we should be able to jump back to the list of pay-fors. I think if we do that, then we're getting the best of both worlds.
And continuing to build on that, I think by design, we should look to add $15, not worrying about how much we're going to be able to cut. And then when we get that we can only cut 7, then we go back, to your point, to the 15. We get that to 8. Maybe we look at the 7, say, oh, can't go any farther, go back to the 8 and get it to 7. That would seem to me to be to be able to have the latitude to go back and forth several times until we get it equal, I think to me makes the fairest and most open process and transparent. So both the 9 members of the City Council have an idea of what we're doing, and the public sees an idea of what we're doing.
Woman O'Neill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with what Alderman Thorpe is saying. I think it's a crucial part of that is the being able to go back and forth. As serving on the council for the 4 prior years' budgets, one of the things that was frustrating is that sometimes down the line, budget amendments countered what was decided prior to, and we never had an opportunity to go back and revisit if there was a way to do one of those. So I think it's really important to note that we can keep going back and making a modification if the council deems that necessary, instead of just losing it, because we've surpassed number 6, 7, and 8, and now we're on 12 and whatnot. So I do agree with everything you're saying, and I think that it's important to note that it is going to be a process of some back and forth and perhaps revisiting some of the issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lippman. So I would ask for this, I'll say, we're looking for an option 3. I take it that's what this would be, an option 3, merging option 1 and option 2 together in a way. So I would think it would be best to maybe lay that out so we can see what the process would be as soon as we can. Obviously, we're making it up right now or coming up with it now. Secondly, what goes into the decision-making of where we're cutting from? So when we come up with all of our pay for, obviously we have a list for all our amendments, how are we prioritizing where we're taking the money from in order to pay for that?
Alderman Huntley.
Yeah, well, we're starting with what folks submitted, right? And trying to order them in terms of what the city manager and the finance staff and the finance committee all think is going to be least painful. So there are some places where I think we found, like, for instance, I think that it is very reasonable to include the revenue in that we will generate from the peak time medic unit, assuming that that gets funded, as a pay for. I think that should be incorporated into the budget. That is a relatively not painful thing to have as a pay for. So it should be relatively higher up on the list. Now, get rid of all of our pothole repair would be a very painful thing. We would not want to put that anywhere near the top of the list. So there is some level of judgment in it, but I think a lot of it is meant to be pretty technocratic about what impacts city operations and what doesn't.
Okay, and I think it's important then through this process for equity that if someone had an amendment and they felt that you're pulling money from a place that others would not want it to be pulled from, but for a different amendment, you're pulling money from a place where people will be like, oh yeah, that's completely fine to pull from that, then that person who put forth the First Amendment may feel slighted that you didn't prioritize finding the best place to pull that money from. So I'm just making sure that there's clarity in how the money will be pulled or where the money will be pulled for every alderperson to have the ability to still have their amendments considered fairly.
If I may, I think that was, in some sense, I think the point that Alderman Thorpe, you were trying to get to of the straw poll, including both things. So getting a sense of overall, what is the least painful, what is the most painful on both sides of that question.
Yep, thank you. So we're all in agreement of option 3. So that I was just sharing my support for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if I could walk it through, just to make sure I understand. So if we do the kind of straw poll ranking of all the amendments, grouped by category, and also grouped by expenses and then the pay-fors. But if we do the pay-fors first, so if we do all that, like you said, by close of business Monday, collate all the data, share it with each other, presumably share it with the public at some point as well, then we'll know a few things. We'd know generally what the pay-fors, everybody, again, subject to final vote, but we'll know general inclination as far as which pay-fors the body's going to generally support, and a list of the twos, right? The pay-fors ranked twos, which would be kind of like the backup, subject to more rigorous debate if we need to go that direction. And same thing for the expenses. So that'll give us a pretty good idea of how much once we figure that, go through that process, we'll have a fairly good idea of how many expenses we can actually have based on those pay-fors, right? Because that'll tell us generally, here's how much we would be willing to pay for
I want to
associated
interject.
expenses, right?
Because before you go too much farther, the straw poll is only for the spends, not for the pay-fors.
Exactly.
We're asking folks to say how strongly they feel about the spends, not about the pay-for side of it.
Why would you not do both?
Why not do both? Because our feeling was that a lot of these pay-fors we explored in the finance committee, and we've sort of talked through them, and think you could very easily cause a lot of damage if we just start ranking the pay-fors by, without having a lot of detailed, thought going into those. I think the pay-fors essentially are more dangerous, and so I am a little bit more hesitant to have them be solely subject to popular will. That's basically where I'm going
To
with
your
it.
point. Yeah, I see your point. Just to close out, so regardless, that will still be helpful even if we just do it for the proposed expenses, expenditures.
We need to wrap up this discussion because we need to move on to stay on schedule. I think we're at 2:25. So
Yeah.
I think we have a sense of where we are, though, and I think we have enough information expressed. For the next step, I'll again turn to Alderman Huntley and giving you a lot of latitude to lead the discussion with reserving the right to take it back.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I think I delegated to the budget team. Really what we wanted to do here was just have the opportunity to walk through all of these amendments and make sure that to the extent there are ones that still need a little bit of work or that need some of the feedback from the department heads, and where there are ones that are overlapping, that we figure out what those exactly need to look like, so the budget team has all the information that they need to go through and turn these into actionable amendments that we can all vote on, on June 1st. So did you guys want to start with the total submission side of the document, or are we going to go through in each tab? Each tab? Okay. Can we pull it up on one of the TVs or no? It's not a big deal. You can get started either way. Yeah, beautiful.
Point of order, or perhaps inquiry. Just want to know, can you walk through the process for this meeting as far as what they're about to do, what you both are expecting of the rest of the council?
Yeah, so really the goal is to finalize these amendments. If we have amendments up here that are fully ready to go, we don't need to do much on them. But there, I know, are ones where two aldermen submitted ones that are, so actually, perfect example, look up at the very first one. Finance Committee and Alderman and Mayor Littman submitted essentially the same thing, but with slightly different amounts spent. And so the goal here will be to talk about those two, figure out exactly how much money we need to spend, get it down to just one amendment. Like, that's really what we're trying to do here, multiplied by a lot of different amendments on this. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
Yeah, I can't see that well either.
Mr. Palico, you want to go?
Alderman, hold on a second. Alderman Huntley, is there a document that we could pull this up so we are following this?
Sure, yeah, it was shared in my email last night, and then also by Ms. Turner at 1:20 PM. It's called FY 2027 Budget Amendment Submission List.
I don't think there was an attachment to your email.
It wasn't an attachment, it was a link to a Google Sheet.
It was in there.
Okay, so I have you said FY 2027 Budget Amendment Submission List. It's not sorted that way, though, so I think that might
You want to go to this next tab, go to Operating Recurring.
Thank you, that's the one.
If, we'll get started, and we'll kind of cover how to navigate the file. So,
Before you start, I just want to make sure everyone has the document that they want so they could follow. Everyone ready to follow? Alderman Thorpe, are you good?
I don't have it yet. Give me a second.
You know what, if we start too soon and we get lost in the beginning, we're going to
CAPRI.
Alderman Thorpe, did I hear you say, here's Harry's email? Okay.
I got it. I got it from Capri. I've got it. Everybody good?
Good.
Okay.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Alderman Thorpe. I appreciate the stall. Gave me some more time. We are going to get into this document, so we wanted to get started with just laying the land, right? And so starting with the submissions tab, this is really a consolidated tab with everything that's on. Can you actually go to the submissions one, Capri, just so we can orient folks? I want to just start at the very beginning. So this one is all of the submissions. So this is going to be very much not filtered. It's going to be in order. You'll see it's by just ID number, by person. And so it's going to probably be the most difficult one to kind of look at and understand. But if you wanted to go here to see your individual submissions and just see them in order, this is probably the best place to go, just so that you can track kind of where did your stuff come in and how did it go. To explain color coding, because if you're wanting to see your submissions and just see what the colors mean, blue are items that our team looked at and saw that possibly were duplicative in nature and maybe had other crossover with other amendments that were submitted from other council members. And so will be ones that we would want to bring forward to you all to just look at, see if there could be some concurrence reached about, yeah, these are pretty similar. We should probably look at them and maybe combine. Orange type colored ones are going to be ones that yellow ones are going to be ones that need more information. I think we have some notes in there about, clarification questions. There's going to be some notes in there that will point to that. Orange are going to be items that possibly are being withdrawn. We've received some sort of communication or otherwise that maybe we're not continuing forward with those, but to maintain a full comprehensive list, we are keeping those on the list. And then red is known withdrawn, right? Red is known and fully withdrawn. And so again, this submissions list is the full comprehensive list. It's probably the best place to go if you want to just see your submission in order. Because of the nature of how amendments work and the fact that we need to be able to kind of track to the fund or the body that it's related to, separating out operating versus capital, we felt it was very important to separate these. We also wanted to add some layers of separation as well, speaking to kind of the language that Harry had previously used around, known, just more kind of obvious ones. We added a category for exempt and some categories for one time as well. And so we're going to move through this categorization moving to the right. And so the next tab is going to be the operating recurring. This is going to be the more dense tab. And now you're going to see that there's some categorization here. It's no longer going to be sorted based on that ID number, but rather it's going to be more subjectively sorted by our team based on amendments. And so there isn't any specific rhyme or reason to how it's sorted, but what we did is we put most of the like items together. And so you'll see that there's a lot of blue items together, then followed by yellow, and then you get into just irregular run-of-the-mill amendments. And so we put the blue ones at top because those are ones we really would like to get clarification on, make sure folks are looking at, because the easiest place probably to generate some immediate cuts would be to remove duplicative items. And then we'd want to make sure we get clarification, and then we would want to step through open items. Do you mind if I just get through the rest of the book first, and then we can go into questions?
Yeah, and just, Mr. Palical, as we're going through this, let's do exempt last, because if we run out of time, that's the best place to not go over, I think.
Okay, great. And then can you step through to one time? So then the one-time items are going to really be items that are one-time in nature, where we would expect that we're not putting them into the base budget book. They're going to be using one-time funds. And so if there's opportunity found in the budget for pay-fors, leveraging one-time funds or reducing one-time funds, we could pull those and use those. Moving into capital, these should be straightforward in the sense that they're related to capital projects, and amendments tied to the CIP specific projects, or adding to those projects, or changing bond type requests tied to those. And then we had specific amendments tied to fees and fines, which we pulled out into their own categories as well.
Actually, let me interrupt you just a second. Ms. Turner, can you freeze the top 3 columns so that as we're scrolling down, we don't lose the headings? And then also freeze column C, the names, so that as we're scrolling, we don't lose that. I think that'll be easier for everyone to follow on the various tabs. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, please.
No. Then the exempt one, I think, actually, Harry, if you wanted to give a little bit of color, I mean, this is probably, it's not like a specific area. It's more, I'd say, administrative in nature. It's these ones that are not specific, but, Alderman Huntley. It'd be helpful if maybe you want to add a little bit of color too. I know you had described it in a good way.
Sure. Yeah, I'll caveat it with, looking at this morning, I realized that I think some of the things that are in here as exempt maybe should not be, so I don't want us to get too confused on it. But basically, the idea is that there will be some amendments that are either so simple or so complicated that it does not make sense to have them go through the process of the straw poll and all. And generally, that's going to be ones that are budget neutral. So it would have to be budget neutral to be exempt, which could mean that it's just changing a name on something, right? It could just be a text amendment. But basically, the idea is that there are some amendments that are either so simple or so complicated that we don't want to put them through the ranking process otherwise. That's the idea.
Can I just ask a basic general question? Just, can you reiterate what the blue and the clear cells are? I got the other colors.
But on top of that, if you don't mind me adding, what I was going to ask earlier is, are you allowed, or, excuse me, Mayor, may I ask before?
No, let's get an answer to that question, and then we'll come to your question next.
Yeah,
It'll just be easier.
It's in addition to his, it's actually his question, but.
Go ahead, we can be somewhat informal. Go ahead.
Excuse me, will you just add a key to this document for us to refer to?
Yeah, we can add a key. That's a great idea. But blue is ones that we identified. So I want to make sure it's clear that we have identified them ourselves as items that we believe might be duplicative in nature. And so, again, they're not, I want to stress that if you don't feel they're duplicative, you can tell us that.
The colors are to organize us today. They are not something that I think we need to spend too much time focused on.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to, but I just want to understand. Blue is duplicative with something like right below it or above it? Is that the idea, or near it, or?
On the individual tabs where their breakout is, that is correct. On the submissions tab, no. The submissions tab, because of the way it's organized in order by alderman, then alderperson, then no, you couldn't make that rationalization.
Okay, so to see the real point about the color code, you got to go off the submissions tab, is your point?
Right.
I got 4 head nods. That was awesome. Thank you.
Alderman Huntley.
Yeah, so let's jump into the operating recurring and start talking about some of these ones. I think people will get what we're trying to do here as we start showing them. Here are 2 that are very similar. We need to figure out, is this actually a $100,000 amendment, or is it actually a $30,000 amendment? So I say we just jump right in. If you want to pull up operating recurring here, I appreciate you trying to freeze the top. Oh, I see.
Right, what we'll do is we'll unmerge it and then we'll.
That's all right. So for FC6 and L20, these, one is $100,000, one is $30,000. They're both seeking to do the same thing within planning and zoning. So if the budget team knows the answer to it, that's great. If not, and we need to call a planning and zoning director, then let's do that. But basically trying to get or maybe Ms. Buckland, we're trying to get an answer to, should it be $30,000? Should it be $100,000? Should it be somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, this is one where I do want to point out, this is one, both this and the next one actually crossover between that operating recurring and the one-time tab. So the other side of that first one, the AI capability where it's talking about accuracy of resident permit applications, the other one that's duplicative is actually on the one-time tab, and it is it's the second line in that one-time tab. So they're also taking very different views of, is this a one-time expense or is it a recurring expense? So it's a similar idea, but it's also got this difference of viewing of what's the time horizon.
That's a great point. So really, we have two questions to answer. How much is this and what type of funding?
Is this on? Good afternoon. I'm here representing Planning and Zoning Director Chris Jakubiak, and I talked to him about this morning, and the idea is that both the $100,000 and the $30,000 would be helpful in getting our AI program up and running to help with permitting and licensing.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you say your name on? I didn't catch it.
Oh, Maria Brown.
Thank you, Maria. I know you, of course, but just on the record.
I'm sorry. So he did want me to reiterate that they are looking for the $100,000 as well as the $30,000 to get the program up and running.
Dr. Buckland, do you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, so the 30,000, so I don't actually see, for the one-time funds, I see a 25 and a 35, but you're saying the right number is 30.
130,000 total.
Total, but the 100,000 is a recurring cost?
The 100,000 is for FY '27. I don't know whether or not it's a recurring cost. Right now, it's the cost that it's going to take to get it up and running for the permitting program.
Okay.
Certainly.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing three separate ones about this, because there is both the two that are listed at the top of the operating recurring, and then there is one over in one time for that Alderman Savage submitted. I think what I'm hearing.
Can you call them out by their ID name instead of the one at the top?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Apologize. I will use the ID names. So we're talking about FC6, L20, and S33. So Alderman Savage's amendment over on the one-time sheet suggested $25,000 for this. I think maybe what I'm hearing from you, Ms. Brown, is that there's both a startup cost to it and an annual cost to it, right?
I know that we were looking into getting $25,000 in FY '26, but we know that the council is looking into giving us the $100,000 for next year. So the 125 is the total, but our idea was to go ahead and find the $25,000 in this year's budget to get the program started, and talk to IT and see what needs to be done to do that.
Alderman Hunley, I'm going to have you.
Go on.
I'm going to have you navigate who you want to call into, and you be your own time clock, because I think you won't have a schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. It seems I've picked a difficult one to get started on. Alderwoman O'Neill, you want to jump in?
Thank you. So what's frustrating about this is that there's 100,000, there's 35,000, there's 20 or 30,000, 35. There's these three different. The 25 is something different. But do we actually have data of what it costs? Is there a specific program? Is there a specific analysis of what it costs, or are we just throwing out $100,000?
Oh, yes, Chris is working with a company, so there is specific data on how much it costs. And if I'm not mistaken, excuse me, originally we had requested 100,000, and I believe Alderman Savage is the one that Chris talked to about the extra 25. So I don't know I'm not sure, about this. 35,000 says Finance Committee. So
Maria,
originally, it was the 25,000 that Alderman Savage, I believe, had talked to Chris about, plus the 100,000.
in the interest of time, would you be able to reach out to Chris to clarify that one-time versus recurring? And we might be able to come back to this. That might help us.
Yes, yes, I'll try to reach him. I believe.
So we really need to know two questions. One is, to get this going, how much money do you expect to need in 1 year? And how much money do we expect to need as recurring funds going forward?
Okay, sure.
Just to clarify the request to answer Alderwoman O'Neill's point, I think if you're at what you're asking, correct me if I'm wrong, what does $30,000 get us? What does $100,000 get us so that we can make an intelligent decision, or $130,000? So that we need to know what we're buying.
What was the line item of the other one that you said there was a third one? Because I didn't see that one.
I'll come over, Maria, and show you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up, within operating recurring, we have two similar ones also from the Finance Committee and from Mayor Lippman for snow removal technology upgrades. We have the same dollar figure on these. They're way easier than the last one. I don't think there's anything outstanding that needs to be resolved. I think these two can just be combined into one. Does that track with Ms. Turner's understanding?
Yes, Capri Turner, budget analyst. We just need to know who's the sponsor and who's the co-sponsor.
We'll let the mayor be the sponsor. It's fine with me.
Thanks for letting me.
Yeah.
I'll be the sponsor, it's fine.
Yeah, Alderman Savage, you got something?
Yeah, because I had an item on this too. I support it, but I think we need clarity on if this is going to be a one-time use, or is it a recurring annual subscription kind of fee for software before this gets finalized?
Oh, I see that you have it as one time also. Yeah, who do we have from Public Works? Oh, Director Vogel. I almost didn't see you back there. So basically, the question is whether this additional funding for snow removal technology is best categorized as one-time or recurring.
Alderman Huntley, just real quick for the point of order, kind of, it is important to get all these answers, but I don't know if we're going to have time to get answers on all these amendments. We could always just have staff get back to us with some of these clarifications.
Yeah, I think as
it out there.
we're seeing on the first one, if we run into something complicated, it's good to just have it come back. But I'm going to guess.
Public Works Director, the answer is it is a subscription service. This would be the annual bill, and we could stop it or switch providers down the road if we wanted to.
Beautiful. Alderwoman O'Neill has a question.
And I just want to make one clarification. In our discussions during finance, you suggested that this subscription might also work for street cleaning. Is that correct?
Correct.
So it's a double duty.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alderman.
So Alderman Savage, are you all right with removing your one-time amendment on this, since it's recurring?
Yep.
And then if the budget team could also just make a note within the recurring that this is also for street sweeping. All right. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Smith-Brown, you got something?
Yes. Hey, Director Vogel. So when we look at this technology, do we get some type of overview of what this technology will offer, or what we'll be getting for this amount of money? Is there like a video we watch of what this technology
Yes,
does?
I can share a
Hold on,
video.
I'm gonna cut you off. That I think that's not the type of question we want to be answering today. I think that's a values question, and we're really just trying to get the mechanics of how much money we need to put into these today and what category. I know you could probably answer it real fast, but yeah, do you want
Just
to?
for process, how do you want Alderman Smith-Brown to get his question answered?
I think if you wouldn't mind just shooting an email to the director.
Well, you have the question, and right now, that was the only question. And that's actually for all of these. If that is a question like that, do we just send that to them? Because that actually goes hand in hand of whether we believe that this is a priority or not. What if we look at the service and we don't think that the service should be spent? We shouldn't spend money on the service.
The other thing I'd suggest is looking back at the Finance Committee meetings where we talked about this.
Okay, so there's a overview of what this service offers. There was like a video of what the service does and things of that
I
nature.
think some of the information I can send you would be helpful.
Thank you. To all of us, if you can. To everyone, if you can. Not just me.
Great. All right, let's move on to our next one, which is L7 and S9, still in operating recurring. So just to be perfectly clear on the last ones, we're combining, or we're getting rid of the Finance Committee one, we're getting rid of, so which was FC8, we're getting rid of S14. We are keeping L21, and it's being noted that it is also for street sweeping. Moving on to L7 and L9. That is for the harbor master seasonal salaries. We have a slight discrepancy between these two amendments, one being 120,000 and one being 112,000. Can anybody speak to which would be correct? Ms. Turner?
120,300 is what harbor master told us that they would need to operate the full cost.
Okay. Alderman Savage, yours is the other one. Do you have any issue with dropping the 112 and going to 120?
Whatever finance thinks is appropriate.
Okay, great. All right, next up is FC9 and S18. This was, I think, a kind of general finance committee recommendation, and then also one from Alderman Savage. And I think really what we should probably do here is just relabel the more detailed version from Alderman Savage as having come from the Finance Committee to denote that Finance Committee supports it, but you just did a better job of writing about it, I think. And this was an enhancement, so there shouldn't be any confusion about it. This was something the department requested, so we should have already calculated it. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be done on this other than relabeling it.
There is a big difference in the
There's a
price. Yeah.
clarification.
Okay.
So for Finance Committee, we need to clarify if you are looking to remove staff from PIP, seasonal staff from Pip Moyer and add them to park maintenance, or if you wanted to use the funding of those positions to do the conversion for those two people, because there's a difference in funding. And it wasn't specific in the report.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the distinction you're making.
So is your amendment for the conversions? It's not to add additional staff, it's to convert them.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, it is to convert them. Yes.
Okay, so the cost of that conversion is $111,300 for those two positions.
Let me ask a clarifying question. What's the difference between the 34,000 and the 111?
Yeah.
The amount and the budget revised amount?
I don't know where the 34,000 came from.
Okay. So which number are we looking at? Which number are we ignoring? The 34,000 or the 100?
34,000, the total cost that I verified to convert those two positions, because they are part-time salary.
Okay. And just so you know, behind you is Director Johnson.
Good afternoon to Rosalind Johnson, Director of Recreation and Parks for the City of Annapolis, for the record. The difference is we were using our part-time staffing that we have 3 part-time staff for. So we're using the $111,300 from our part-time staffing to convert. So the net difference that we need is the $34,000, and that's what the $34,000 is. So we put up 3 part-time positions to get 2 full-time positions, and we're short $34,000. But the FC9, the department has major concerns about the funding source for FC9. And I can share our concerns if you'd like for me to address those.
So the request is for an additional 34,000 to take the total that's in the budget to 111,300. Is that correct?
Yes, so she's suggesting that they're going to use 3 of their part-time seasonal, so their seasonal salary funding will decrease, and then the additional that they would just need is the 34,000.
Okay.
Buckland, you want to jump in over there?
Yeah, I just want to, in some ways, the 34,000 version it comes paired with, it's this increase on this side and a cut, right, together, right? So the proposal is both of those things at once, right?
Well, as long as the cut is not removing the front desk staff at Pip Moyer.
No, but what you're saying was reducing the seasonal.
And increasing the full-time, yes.
And increasing the full-time, but the 34,000 represents you're doing both, we're signing up for both of those things. The 111 is if you left the seasonals alone and all you did was just add the 2 full-time. So there is a question, I think, of just intention. I think what I'm hearing from you is you're fine with the combined action. Is that right?
Correct. We do not want to keep the part-time because, one, it's not fair to employees, even if they are our part-time employees, because we lay them off right before the Thanksgiving holiday and then hope that we'll get them back for our spring season. One, we've lost all the training that we've invested in those staff members, and then it's kind of difficult and not employee-friendly when you tell someone, sorry, your job no longer exists right before the holidays.
Right. So I think the net cost here to do what we said in this, which is converting part-time to full-time, is $34,000. So that is the number we should be looking at, I think.
Eric?
Yeah.
Just to put a finer point on it, it's to convert 3 part-time to 2 full-time, and you need $34,000. I think you.
Thank you. I think that was the missing link. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Probably because one of us submitted it incorrectly. I think that's the confusion. Yeah, thank you.
Can we just ask for clarification, if that's accurate, for the note to be updated to describe it, whatever the correct way is?
Yeah.
Yes. So does that mean that Finance Committee wants to withdraw their amendment?
Sure. The FC9, yeah.
Or would you like to be added as a co-sponsor?
Sure, yeah, put it as Savage Finance Committee, and it should read, convert 3 part-time maintenance workers to 2 full-time? Is that right? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Mayor Littman, for the amount versus budget revised amount, do you mind just sharing the difference between the two? Because I think that's where the confusion was also coming from, is what's the difference between regular budget amount and the revised amount?
The amount is the amount that was submitted by the sponsor of the amendment. The budget revised amount is the amount that Budget Finance confirmed is the true cost.
So now that we have that information, can we delete the 34,000 as the, because it could be misleading or easy to forget?
We should delete the 111,000.
I thought Ms. Turner said the cost is 111.
So the way that the amendment is going to be written is it's just going to be the 34,000. But this is just the submission list. When we come forward with the actual amendment on June 1st, it'll be written like that.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. We good to keep moving?
Yep.
All right. The next one's a biggie. I might skip it. What was the reason that was on there? Is that just for us to try and work out what the actual number is there? Why is that one in peach? It's my contingency.
Needs more clarification.
Yeah, it needs more clarification. Okay. Joel, Mr. Palico, do you think it's worthwhile to talk through this one right now, or should we just put a pin in it? This one is very complicated. I think it's not worthwhile trying to figure it out right here. So I'm going to exercise the delegated executive privilege to skip over it. All right, 01 O'Neill.
Just for clarification, Alderman, H10, are you moving from this tab to exempt tab?
Yeah, I think it needs to be in the exempt one. I think it's something that we need to vote on first. So just in the interest of not scaring everybody with something that I'm not explaining, what I'm suggesting there is that we better calculate vacancy savings in our 5 or 6 largest departments and put half of that money into the contingency, and then that would create an additional pot of funds. This is not really spending any money. It's saving money, but it's also complicated and fluid, and so I'm suggesting we just move it over to exempt. We can vote on it up or down. You guys can agree with me or not agree with me, and then we can move on with the rest of our budget. So.
Go ahead, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Alderwoman O'Neill has the next one, 01, which I think I was just told is in pink because it needs a little more explanation. So what additional clarification do we need on 01?
It was going to state.
Beautiful, okay. So,
Talk about it, or?
yeah, I think if you feel like you need more information for it to be finalized, then go ahead and ask. But I don't want to just talk about it for the sake of here's why this is a good idea.
I'm good.
Okay, great. I see no other ones highlighted in this tab, so we could jump over to the one-time, or I wanted to see, is there anything else that you guys think, any other amendments here that need more discussion? On the operating recurring tab, do any of the other members of the council feel like they need additional discussion, additional conversation with department heads to finalize those amendments? Seeing, oh, yep, Alderman Thorpe.
So at the risk of opening something you didn't want open, so the operating recurring still shows the $4 million, it looks like. Right or wrong there?
Where are you looking?
Down at line 3940. So I guess the question is, what are we doing with that $4 million amendment? Are we, well, yeah, let me ask a question. What's the plan forward with that? Since it's so big, we ought to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. So the plan with it is to have it be one of our exempt ones, so we don't have to figure it out by tomorrow and have everybody, put it as one of their, as part of the straw poll. So that's part one. And then the other part is, I think I'm going to keep working with the Finance Committee on tightening up exactly what the numbers are. So even just since we had our budget submission, I think we've agreed that it's going to be much more like 3.6 and 4. But we need to really have a good spreadsheet showing why we've made those calculations. Does that answer your question?
It does, but, and you may already be thinking this, but since we're time limited, it's so big and such a significant, dramatic financial thing that it seems to me that we need to staff position on that and what are the pros and cons, almost like a staff, what we call staff report.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
You're tracking in that direction, is that what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, the reason why I don't want to go through it line by line today is because I want the staff to have confidence in what I'm trying to do there, to the point that they feel like they can explain exactly what I'm trying to do and whether or not they agree with it, or maybe somewhere in the middle, right? Like there could be we think it's a good idea, but don't do it right now, or we think parts of it are a good idea, but other parts are not. Does that answer your question? No, still not?
Well, I don't want to waste today on it. I just,
No, we're
it's so
moving
big.
ahead appropriately.
I also wanted to clarify. I also wanted to clarify that directionally, it was listed as a positive number of 4 million. I just want to make sure you knew that it's a negative number. It's a reduction to the budget.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, no, and I do understand that, but it's so big, stating the obvious is, and it's such a great savings that I could see us voting 8-1 on this great idea, and the one being the fact that we've introduced a whole lot of risk into making budget. And so I think at the end of the day, if all 9 of us are on the same sheet of music as to what the increased risk is and how it's changing the budget philosophy, that the finance team, we should all be head nodding when we make that decision based on the information. And I'm sure that's where you're going. It's just we're time limited. The other option obviously be to look at a dramatic move like this for fiscal year 28 budget, but we're here dealing the 27 budget. And so how do we get it, how does the 9 members of the council get informed to all be voting on the same set of facts? That's what I'm looking for.
Sure. Yeah, and so I think what we would want to do with this is have it be under this exempt tab so that we don't need to have it go through the straw poll, but work over the next week to really make sure that the staff can fully present on it. And then when we go to vote on this on June 1st, they will be able to lay out, here's what we're trying to do, here's all the pros to it, here's any cons to it, and then we can vote on it at that point with a full understanding given at that time.
So to Alderman Savage's point, it would be on the savings list. I mean, it's such a dramatic number that if it's up here, then the spend list is a lot longer. If it's down here, because the acting director hypothetically says, we should not accept that risk, then it's way down here.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I think that's a good way of thinking about it.
thank you.
Yeah, Alderman Savage.
Just a few things before we leave this tab, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
great.
Just to get a couple, so just to clarify again, so the amount column, and then there's the budget revised amount. Is the amount the original that we submitted in the budget revised amount is revised from finance? Am I understanding that correct? Okay.
Yeah, I see you have a couple that have been revised. Do you want to talk about those? Do you
Yeah,
need
I
more
hadn't noticed it until now, but and I can certainly do this offline as well. I guess I could circle up with transportation because I noticed let's see, bus service.
Can I suggest, Alderman Savage, why don't we
Yeah.
jump over to the one-time tab? You look through these ones going on in operating recurring, and if you have some high priority ones to talk with the departments about today, that for whatever reason need to be today, we can come back to it. Is that cool?
Yeah, well, I just want to throw these out there because I'll be following up, because there was an increase on that, and there was an increase in the elections reserve, or I'm sorry, that was clarified. So you have 650,000 for revised budget amount. Explain that.
So I reached out to who handles the elections budget to get an anticipated amount for our next election, and they gave me a range, and I took the median of that range. They gave me a range of, I'm sorry, 500 to 800,000.
And this is on S26.
Thank you. Yes, they gave me 500 to 800,000 of what they anticipated to cost for our next election, and we went with the median of that. So it could be that, it could not. It's just an estimate.
Might need to refine this a little bit. My intention was just to get a little bit in there, planning for future years. So I guess I'd like to know what the first kind of payment would be, first deposit would be into that account for the next cycle. That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Ms. Buckland, you want to jump in?
Yeah, if I may, I just wanted to provide some feedback regarding S16, which is the OCS social worker care coordinator, adding a third one of those. I did check back with OCS, and their preference is to not add a social worker position. They feel like they've got sufficient capacity. The grantee site visits portion of that, you don't need a social worker for, and so if the desire is to have some additional kind of program capacity.
Point of order, we're not supposed to be discussing merits of these right now. We're going to be engaging in a debate if we go down this road. This is not the time.
I wasn't going to interrupt you, but I was going to say the same
Okay.
thing. So,
I will be quiet.
yeah. All right, moving on to one time. So S33, we are waiting to hear back on. There are two additional ones that need some more clarity, S30 and S35. And that is, so Ms. Turner, you want to jump in about why we need clarity on those?
Yes, so for S30, it's a reoccurring expense, and we can have the ITS director speak to it to confirm, but I believe it's a reoccurring expense, so it wouldn't be suitable for one-time funds.
I'm sorry, what's that for 30 or 35?
30, for S30.
You said that's a recurring?
Yeah, reoccurring expense.
Maybe Mr. Packman, you want to explain?
We would need a little more detail on this. Pre-2014 could go back potentially quite a long way. But so to properly scope it, we want to, properly price it. We'd like to scope it. How much further back would you like to go? And with that determination, I can engage the vendor and get you a cost on that.
I was told that the city clerk's office already reached out to Legistar or somebody associated with that, trying to determine costs? Because
Not that I'm
they
aware
have
of.
the information already digitally available, it's just not included in our system. So that's why I was assuming it was just a one-time cost to get it into our existing
Yeah, I
system.
got you, Gina. The city clerk's going to answer.
I just wanted to say that all of the legislation is electronically stored at the Maryland State Archives. So that's why we only have legislation in Granicus that started in 2014 forward, because everything else is already electronically held at the Maryland State Archives. So I wasn't sure why this was a request.
Because having it all in one system, available with one click, one search, it's much easier than having to go to two different websites to go to the archive. Since we already had it available, that's why I thought it'd be something easy to get it uploaded.
To speak to the second point there, yes, there would be obviously a lift to upload it, but whenever you're greatly expanding what's available, there's usually increased storage costs. So there would be an ongoing aspect to that, usually expressed in some number of gigabytes or what have you that are going to be living on computers that don't belong to us. So yeah, there's ongoing expense there. So the scope of the project would need to be refined in order for a dollar amount to be assigned to it.
Do you think you're going to be able to get back to us with a dollar figure to get started on that this year? And maybe you could provide Alderman Savage with both a recurring option and a one-time use funding option.
Yeah, I'm sorry if this sounds
No, go ahead.
snide, but like it's a 400-year-old city. Like how far are we talking about making everything that's in the Maryland State Archives also available on our hosted platform? Or are we talking about going back 10 years, 20 years? Like that when I speak of the scoping of the project, that's really what I'm talking about.
I also want to chime in. I think we heard him say there is no one-time option, that if you're doing this, then it's an annual expense. So
It's going to be a little column A, a little column B, right? Like there's going to be a lift involved in moving that data, which is either staff time or consultant time or what have you. But we could be potentially talking about a tremendous amount of data that is stored in a scanned image format, not in a plain text format. Storage costs go up. You could be talking about terabytes of data that you're asking a third party to then host. So that's where I say again, the scoping of this is important to ascertain the cost.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I was not told it was going to be this complicated. It's not like it's top of my list urgent thing to do, but I'm happy to circle back after the budget to get this
Sure, I'm willing to, yeah.
sorted out. I mean, I do have an interest in it, but it's not like
Yeah, I understand your
something that I feel
motivation
like I have to
as far
rush.
as a one-stop shop. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. But I understand your motivations. It's just, yeah, it's a little more complicated than that, and there are some additional ongoing costs that would be involved.
So Alderman Savage, oh, I'm sorry. Ms.
I just
Watkins.
wanted to say that we have blue binders in our office with the legislation that starts back from 1980. We rarely have requests for it, but we will happily scan it and send it to someone if they ask us.
I'd go back and look at it.
I know, I ask Ms. Reuter routinely for information, but it's just, yeah.
So
we don't have to get into it now.
I think the bottom line on this
fine.
one is, it sounds like Alderman Savage is willing to pull it.
Yes.
We'll come up over the course of the next year with a tighter scope for what is definitely something I think worthwhile, but we don't need to figure it out in the next day, and so we're going to remove it. Next one is S35. S35. Yeah, Ms. Turner, jump on in.
So just needed to clarify if you wanted to, it says to reduce, but you put in the full amount that was proposed for FY 2027.
What do you need clarity on?
So your amendment says to reduce the amount for the APD signing bonuses, but the amount put in was for the full amount.
No, I don't care how it gets paid or whatnot. Well, I do. My only point is that it's now a recurring cost we've had in one-time uses for the past, I think, at least 3 years. It doesn't seem like it meets that definition, and so I think it should come out of the police budget instead of the one-time use. So yeah, that's all I'm trying to do.
So you just want to remove it from one-time funding and add it to reoccurring?
Yeah. So I know there's some money that was carried over. I think only, no, I thought.
One-time money does not carry forward. We have to reappropriate it.
Okay, well, my point is though, I think for the signing bonuses, only a portion was used.
Correct.
Only
And
50,000 or so maybe?
Currently, I think it's at 12,000 and anticipated to be 51,000 by the end of FY '26.
Okay.
But really, how much we're using in FY '26 doesn't actually have a bearing on FY '27 because it's not carrying over. So I think what should be done with this one is it should be put into the one-time use bucket of pay-fors, and then we need a new line item essentially within the operating recurring of the police budget for what is a realistic estimate of what will be spent on signing bonuses in FY '27. Does that get at your intent, Alderman Savage?
Yes.
And so whether it's the budget team or maybe Captain Miguez, I think we need to hear. Yes, Chief Miguez. I think we need to hear what that realistic figure would be within the operating recurring budget, so there can be an amendment for that. And if you don't know it right off the top of your head and you want to come back to us in 15 minutes, that's perfectly fine.
It should be about $100,000 for the next.
Sorry, can you start by introducing yourself?
Sorry, Acting Chief Amy Migueth with Annapolis Police. It should be about $100,000 for the next, it's hard to predict, but what we do is we give that information to finance every time someone's hired who qualifies for that, and then let them know if they are not continuing employment with us.
Great.
I do think you need to ask the question first of, although this program has been recurring for 3 years in nature, is there an expectation that it has a finite period? If it is recurring, just because it has continued for 3 years is not automatically mean that it becomes base budget just because it recurred. If there is a belief that it is finite in nature and that there is a goal to have the police department fully staffed and that there should be an end, I could be convinced that this should still be considered one-time funds and that that's where the appropriate place that it should live. So I wouldn't want you all to immediately jump towards put it into base budget because that's where it belongs. I think that question needs to be discussed first and then make that decision, but that's what I would encourage first, debate-wise.
Sure. I mean, now's the time to have it. My take is, first of all, regardless of where we put it in the budget, I'll say I think this is a worthwhile use of money. But what the question to me is, how many times do we use it before it becomes recurring, right? Like, we call it one-time use money. We've used it at least 3 times. I think your argument is there's some number between 1 and infinite that it is appropriate for it to be in what we call one-time use money. Do you have an opinion on what that number should be?
To me, this one is more about the nature of the expense. And so the one-time nature of it is that you're doing it for one-time uses of an individual that you are hiring. It's not that it's a one-time expense related to signing bonuses. It's you have this person hired, that's a one-time use. You're not giving this one person multiple one-time funds. So it's not recurring. That one person is not receiving multiple bonuses. So the nature of it is one time. And so the justification for me continues to be consistent. It's just a matter of if the police department will continue to use this as a recruitment strategy, then yes, move it into base budget. My belief was that when it first was rolled out, it was because it needed to attract talent as in a manner to bring staffing to adequate levels, and then the program would dissipate. If that's not the case, then yes, move it into staffing. But I would want to encourage you all to think about it from a perspective of that, not to just be like, oh, it's been in one-time use for 3 years, it must be base budget.
Sure. I don't know if we want to make a decision right now. I don't know if we kind of want to hear the sense of the council of what makes sense. That might be the best way to do it. Or, I mean, we could kind of default to not changing what the staff has made as their recommendation. Oh, Alderman Thorpe is motioning to me that that is what he.
I think we move on, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter for now, and if we get into this, I agree with your last sentiment, right? If we get into these, because there's pros and cons, and I think we've expressed our sentiment now for next year.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on what's being suggested here. Are you, Alderman Savage, who submitted the amendment, leaning towards saying we should not have this, we should not have this on here at all as an amendment?
No, I still want it on an amendment because like, again, I'm trying to think of other departments too. Like, would we put all the departments' bonuses on one-time use, or would we bake them into the individual salaries and benefits? I agree with you. It's a worthwhile thing to do, but it's not something I feel like I'm not motivated to argue this till the cows come home. It's just if the council decides it's a different policy direction, I'm fine with that. I'm just putting that out there.
I'm a little bit unclear on where we are with this at this point. The mayor looks like maybe he had something to say. You want to jump in and save me on this?
I get the argument of why it should not be one-time use. My suggestion is to leave it in that bucket this year, and to Alderman Thorpe's point, we could revisit it in the formation of next year's budget. That's just, I think we don't need to further deliberate this right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That said, if we expect to spend $100,000 on it in the next year, I think we should have the line item be $100,000. So I do think as we have our pay-fors, reducing it down to $100,000 should be something we consider, but we don't have to decide that right now. Okay, I believe that is all of our one-times. I don't think there's anything else that needs additional.
So Alderman Hunley, just to clarify, so we are no longer, the amendment is not to remove it from one-time funding, but actually the amendment is to just reduce the one-time funding from 200,000 to 100,000, leave it as one-time funding, make it right-sized to the amount that Chief Miguez suggested.
I think Alderman Savage would like to leave it the way that he initially proposed. The dissent I'm hearing is that might not get voted for, but I think we should do it because that's what he'd like to propose. And then separately, let's have ourselves a pay for of reducing it from $200,000 down to $100,000.
Okay, we will leave it as is.
Yep, thank you. All right, anything else on the one-time side of things? It doesn't look like there's any differences between amount and budget revised amount. So seeing none, let's jump on over to capital. So what you'll see at the top of capital is that there's a sort of amalgam here from Finance Committee, myself, and Alderman Thorpe, where we're more or less trying to get at the same thing by cutting the same pot of money. We have a little bit of, there's a more Eastport-centered project, or no, it's not fair to say centered, but a more Eastport-tinged project that he's looking at. There's a more downtown-tinged project that I'm looking at, but essentially we've got about 80% overlap in what we're suggesting doing. And it follows from the Finance Committee's recommendation, which is, the Finance Committee's recommendation was to reduce internal, invisible spending and to increase very visible external spending that residents can see. So if you look at these first, I think it's really 9 lines. I think it's the first 9 lines. What we're, Alderman Thorpe, feel free to jump in if I mischaracterize where I think the two of us are at with combining these. But I think what we'd like to see is essentially stick with what Alderman Thorpe had proposed. So all of these amendments marked as Thorpe, I think should stay. In addition, we add 2 new ones that put $125,000 each into general striping and marking and into general sidewalks brick. That would add up to just shy of $1 million. And that $1 million would likely come from changing, well, you could probably explain it better than me, but changing, I'll just say, how we design the 3 new fire stations. You want to explain it better?
Sure, right now we have $2 million in the CIP for design of 3 fire stations in the 27 budget. And the rough concept would be to do 1 fire station, then another fire station, then a third. So rather than do the designs of all 3 in fiscal year 27, to do design of 1, and then learn from the construction, and so the fire chief could affect the design of the second. Now, what I've confirmed is that we could still contract for the design of all 3, but not execute the design for all 3 in 27, and we would budget for those designs of design number 2 and design number 3 in future years when we would be better informed by the earlier constructions. I also want to be clear that this does not tie us into any linear fashion. This would be the director of central services working with the fire chief to plan it out. So the rough estimate is if we put $1 million in the budget for 27, obviously the first fire station would be the hardest, most complex to design, and then we could use the additional, we could budget the additional ones in the future. Does that make sense?
So in terms of actually creating these amendments, here's what I am suggesting the finance team do, the budget team do. It is delete FC1 and H1. It is then relabeling what's currently in rows 6, 7, 8, and 9 to keep them exactly the same, but relabel them to be finance committee amendments, and then to add in 2 additional finance committee amendments, which would be $125,000 for brick sidewalks and $125,000 for marking, for general striping and markings.
Alderman, I'm not sure why you're relabeling it from just the sponsors, as if they're Alderman Thorpe's amendments. Why are you changing them?
Yeah, because I think Alderman Thorpe and I both tried to put into actual amendment form this very general recommendation from the Finance Committee, which was to go from less visible to more visible infrastructure. And so, I mean, it's not a hill I'll die on, but essentially I think we were both trying to enact the will of what the Finance Committee recommended in our report.
Could you combine sponsors?
Sure, yeah, you could call them Huntley Thorpe. That's fine with me too, whatever.
Yeah. I also want to be clear, so Alderman Thorpe described them. I want to make sure we're getting a chance to discuss the merits, where we could ask Chief O'Malley and Finance to talk about the merits of what was proposed.
Sure, and let's do that, but if you wouldn't mind, let me put a pin on that while we keep talking about a couple more of the
just trying to follow the process and not want to lose track of that.
Totally. I will make sure we do not. So the other 2 here that are also kind of along those same lines were the Thorpe T1 and the Savage S4. So Alderman Savage, you're also looking to put more money into road resurfacing, or sorry, move money from road resurfacing and put it into non-brick sidewalks. So what I'm trying to do here is get more money into those sidewalks too. I think that was a goal of the Finance Committee. The reason why, look, you want to ask me spend $500,000 on sidewalks, that sounds just dandy to me. What we did, though, was talk to, and really credit goes to Alderman Thorpe here, was talk to the Director of Public Works to understand what they realistically think they could spend, and the number that came back was $150,000. So I appreciate the intent. I would love to spend $500,000 on sidewalks, but I think it would be more prudent to only put in the amount that they're telling us they can spend.
That's fine. I withdraw mine.
Okay.
Since I've heard about Alderman Thorpe, so I think I'm good with that.
And then I think that that T1 could be also relabeled as Huntley Thorpe or Finance Committee or whatever we just had this discussion about. Yeah, and then Ms. Buckland wants to jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted clarification. I know we're not trying to add amendments at this point. We're trying to clarify them. So that your point earlier about we've got some slight mischaracterization, you had said we're going to add two amendments. I would, if we want to revise the existing ones, then let's do that, even if that's a larger revision. I'd rather not just outright add. So if you'd be willing to work with them on what that wording should be and what that revised amount should be, that would definitely be my preference, rather than just us outright adding stuff.
That feels more complicated to me, but if what you want is for me to dramatically change FC1 and H1 rather than add two new ones, I can do that.
Yeah, that would be my preference. Thank you.
Okay.
I was thinking that we could take out H1 and just add change FC1 to 350 and leave the others as they were. And then just put the clarifying two projects that you wanted for FC1.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, I think the benefit is we had been breaking these up so that they were funding for each one. But let's just talk about this offline. And I don't think there's anything that all 9 of us need to discuss, and we can talk about the exact mechanic of it. Happy to make that work with you. All right, where are we? Oh, we want to talk about fire station. So Alderman Mayor Littman, why don't you jump in and we can call up Chief Romali if we need.
Or just want to start with the premise of that there's $2 million currently budgeted for design and planning. And so I want to start with the premise of if we're only designing and planning one this year, what does that cost? And I don't know if that's a question for finance team or for Chief Romali, if you have an answer. Thank you. I didn't think of that. Thank you.
And just for anybody listening, Chief Romali said he would defer to Director Flinner.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. So the proposed budget has $2 million for design and planning of the fire station, and then $8 million for the construction of one fire station. And so as I understand the proposal is, let's figure out the design and planning for one station, construct it, and then learn from that before designing and planning for 2 and 3, either consecutively or staged out. And so just trying to understand what is the actual, if we're reducing the cost from 2 million to some less number, because now we're designing and planning 1 instead of 3, what is that cost?
Thank you. Matt Flinner, Central Services. That is accurate. We would want to take them one at a time and learn our lessons from the first fire station and leverage those on stations 2 and 3. One of the challenges we have this first year, however, is we can't tear down and rebuild a fire station somewhere else. We have to rebuild on that existing building. So a huge challenge we have is how do we remain operational while totally doing a facility renovation at the same time? And we wanted to look holistically at all 3 in that, do we move some staff or some services, shift them here, maybe, or we add on to the capacity at one firehouse so that it can take on some others in the short term. So really we wanted to bring in a vendor next year to help us understand how would we do this over 10 years, very, very carefully, phased out, one phase at a time. And that's why we're guessing on $8 million a fire station after that. But our analysis would also come with a cost breakdown and when we would need to request that and have it added to the CIP budget. So really in the short term, we need help figuring out how we would go about that project. And that's why we asked for funding the way we did.
Okay, so what is the funding you need to just do design and planning for one station?
We asked for $200,000 to get us started. It's merely a guess, and we don't have any vendors on contract, but that would get a design construction vendor here to start looking at it and to start asking questions.
So for FY27 spending, you'd be okay with reducing the $2 million for design and planning down to $200,000?
I think we'd be very hard pressed to spend, I mean, $2 million would imply we're starting design and we don't even know. We haven't even started the planning yet. I'm sorry?
I think you meant 2 million when you said 200,000.
No, we estimated that the analysis would be 200,000. That's pretty standard just to bring in an architect to give us a breakdown and how we would go about this, look at designs. I mean, we wanted to start small before we asked for a huge funding increase because we know we're not going to spend that all that first year because we don't even know how we would go about it yet. And then once we get those recommendations, we would want to share that with all of you to get your preferences on the best path forward.
So that I understand it, it's a reduction in FY27 spending from 2 million to 200,000, but that doesn't mean eliminating that 1.8 million. It means pushing out that 1.8 million to future years?
Absolutely, yes, because then we would hopefully want to grow upon that, or maybe we would need to do further analysis in 28 and beyond.
Okay. Between now and when we get to June 1st, if you could just spend some time on that sheet to better allocate the timing of the spending so that we don't accidentally remove funding or lose track of what my concern that I'll try to get to is if we eliminate, say, the 11 million, it's 8 million for construction, so it's 9 million total. I don't want to just reduce it to 200,000 and lose track of the planned expense, because it's going to bring the total debt load deceivingly down, and then next year we're going to come back and put it back in. So I just want to make sure we're getting more accurate with that, not eliminating it.
Happy to refine those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I also just want to point out that first of all, I exceptionally appreciate the conversations we've had about this, but if we walk down the 200,000 path, the consequence of that is we would not have funds in the budget to design any fire stations in 27. And I don't want to put words in Chief Romali's voice, but I think he's looking to get a fire station designed pretty quickly. So you work through these numbers. Over to you all, but I just want to point that out that
I think we ask that you and you to and the two ladies over here to figure that out before we have to vote on this.
Happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologize for pointing and use, but you follow what I meant.
And I think the goal that I heard from Alderman Thorpe, and that I'm going to hazard a guess that Mayor Littman shares, is we want to do the planning for all three and the design for at least one, maybe you want more, but at least one within FY27. That's the figure we're looking for?
So the proposed budget was to do the design and planning for all three, and then just construct one. The amendment, which I'm supportive of, is to design and plan one, then build one, and then come back to it. Is that? But I think we don't need an answer necessarily today. I think we need feedback and let the Director of Central Services, Chief of Fire, Finance, and our City Manager and Deputy City Manager to discuss how that should look.
Happy to. I just wanted to throw out really quick, we do have other active CIP projects at those fire stations too that we're also expected to get done in 27. So, I mean, with one facility engineer, we only have the bandwidth to do so much realistically.
Yeah, actually, while you're at the mic, could you just answer that for us, that we have quite a few projects in here going on at fire stations, and at the same time, we're talking about tearing them all down. Could you just give us some explanation for why that is?
It's the challenge we have with such outdated facilities, right? Right now, we have 2 projects underway to add women's restrooms to the fire station because we only have single-sex restrooms and locker room facilities currently. That's a huge problem that we need to fix immediately, and that's why we're trying to fix the restrooms. We also have a leaky roof at Forest Drive that we want to seal up to seal that facility envelope to get more years out of that building if we do have to hold off for a few years before we can do that full renovation. So we really need to get them up to snuff, make sure they're okay for at least the next 5 years, and then explore further renovations and really taking them down and building brand new state-of-the-art facilities.
Great, thank you. We get on this topic of combining mine and Alderman Thorpe's and the finance committees, and then also talking about fire station? Right. Yeah, okay. So moving on down, we're now at L3 and T4. So these are 2 that are very similar. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward to agree with them, to get them to agree. But $77,913 from Mayor Littman, $80,000 from Alderman Thorpe. Is it fair to say that Mayor Littman had the more precise number? Oh.
I am ready to pull that amendment.
Keeping it easy. And then I think we have a handful of Savage and Smith Brown amendments. Need some more clarity. I'm going to need some more clarity on one of mine, but let's just start with S1.
My intention on this one would be for.
Can we start with the budget team to tell us what the additional information they need? Why it was highlighted?
It just needs to be clarified if it's going to be a CIP or operating expense.
Yeah, my intention with that is for CIP.
Okay, that's it. I think that was clear. Unless you guys are going to tell me it can't be, then great. We'll move on to the next one, SB 5.
SB 5 is the same thing,
Sure.
a
we can-
CIP or operating expense.
The intent was for it to be operating long-term, but initially it could start as a CIP. Because it's for us to have consistent cleanup across the city. So what would your recommendation be?
Can I ask a question on this? Might help.
Fine with me, while they're thinking, yeah.
So I'm trying to remember the description on this. I'm sorry, I can't recall it, but if this is to clean up, waterways and that kind of thing, or streets?
This is to have to identify hotspots within our city, which are highly polluted, as you all know. I mean, we're not to get into the detail of what it is, but that's what it's prioritizing.
I'm just asking because there may be other pools of funding, be it the watershed fund or our existing, Public Works has a number of different funds for illicit discharge detection and elimination. That's what our street sweeping program goes towards.
To be an operating expense, a recurring operating expense from my read of it. Mr. Palikal, you want to weigh in on that?
No, I was going to go down the path of Alderman Savage. I was curious if there was opportunity to put it within one of the enterprise funds as additional refuse or anything, but I was just curious if Director Vogel had any thoughts on that. We were unsure of if it was building a project for something or if it was
It's not building
operating.
a project at all.
So it's just maintenance, but then I
it's a
think just
team.
if it's related to trash or if it's otherwise, I would be curious if Director Vogel thought it could be captured underneath what it
Yeah,
was.
I'll save him the walk-up. I'm pretty sure I know what Director Vogel's response can be on that, which is that he would prefer it not be in the enterprise funds and not be paid for with fees. He would rather, and Director Vogel, if I say the wrong thing, feel free to speak up, but I'm pretty sure your answer is cleaning up trash on the streets you would not want out of an enterprise fund because it should not be paid for with fees. It should be paid for with general fund revenues. Is that, you want to nod along to that? Yes, great. That's what I thought. Alderwoman O'Neill.
Thank you. I actually think that this could possibly be combined with mine, although mine was very specific to a street. Mine was specific to a street because it happens to be in my ward and has been complained about by residents for a long time. But if we're going to keep it as operating, then that could all be combined into one. So we could do a co-sponsored.
Yeah,
I'd welcome
I was
that.
thinking about that also.
Remove the other one from, that we spoke about.
I was thinking, I welcome that. Thank you, Alderwoman O'Neill, for your support.
That was 01. And then co-sponsor this one.
Okay, and you want me to add you as a co-sponsor to
SB5.
SB 5? Okay.
And then Alderman Savage wants to jump in, but I do think a question we still need to answer on this is whether $100,000 is the correct amount. But why don't you go?
Well, how much was, Alderman O'Neill's, how much was yours?
Mine was 10,000 because that was the number I was given that it would cost to do weeds and cleanup sweep for several times the Clay Street area, so.
So, again, my 2 cents is that I think there's a good argument to be made to have at least some of this come out of the Watershed Restoration Fund if it has to deal with trash removal. That is, if my recollection is correct, how we pay for our street sweeping program, because it does help get us credits towards that program. So it may need more investigation as far as if that is appropriate, but that may be one way to have a dedicated funding stream for that.
It's trash and weeds, so it is some sidewalk upkeep or at least initial upkeep.
Well, could maybe
Those weeds
take-
are preventing erosion, okay? We
Well,
can't
could
put that in the
Could
water.
you take some of it out of the sidewalk maintenance fund? I'm just trying to think of ways, because so we don't have to keep, I think we're going to have a problem if we keep taking things out of operating. If we can find dedicated funds, this seems appropriate for sidewalks because it's a safety issue, maintenance issue on them. Just, again, throwing that out there.
So,
I think it's a good suggestion, but I think we need an answer from finance whether that's an adequate source of funds, because that would, so if it's an allowable source.
I mean, finance deferred to the director, and I puppeted the director. So it might be better for the city manager to weigh in.
Very good.
Oh, no, just that, to me, this feels like something that we should go take offline and come back with a recommendation on.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. And then to the point of the size of this, Alderman Smith Brown, was there a reason why you went with $100,000?
Really, it doesn't, as long as we're investing some money into cleaning what we know to be the reality of human beings, which is trash and pollution. So if we can invest $20,000, we had a team of 5 people going out. Really, it's just to invest as much as we can initially and see how we can do it long term.
Yeah, Alderman Thorpe?
Yeah, so if I think, I hear you saying that this is about street cleaning.
No, this is about environmental cleaning. There's no specific street. It says this is citywide clean team pollution response, so pollution in general. If you go in many of the wooded areas in Annapolis, you'll see a high, at least in my ward and across the city where I've gone, you'll see a high rate of pollution trash. And so if we're identifying those hotspots across the city, we can invest time and also some of our people to go out and clean that trash up instead of it just being during, Earth Day.
Got it. All right, I understand that. Thank you.
Folks, I think we need to move on this. Unless we hear otherwise, it'll stay at $100,000. If Alderman Smith Brown wants to revise it in the next 24 hours to increase its chances of passage, that's his prerogative, but otherwise, let's keep moving. I'm sorry, yes, it is the two of your prerogative, yes.
I have one additional, Ms. Buckland, when you are having that conversation about the other source of funds, if you could look at Road 28, which is SB4, Spot Creek cleanup might also be, might also appropriately fall under another source of funding.
Yeah. Alderman Thorpe, you got something to add on this before we move on?
I do, and fully respecting you want to move on. I love this idea. My concern is that I think we need a city staff estimate as to, so I would encourage perhaps Alderman Smith Brown and the Director of Public Works or the city manager getting together and scoping it so that when we vote, and we vote enthusiastically for this, we know what we're voting for. It makes all the sense, but it's not the time to bring up the Director of Public Works and have him, explain, but I do think we should have that for this, if we can.
Where I'm leaning on is it might end up being a little bit like Alderman Savage's records request, where it's worthwhile, but it would be better suited in next year. But let's move on. So, boy, this one will be fast and easy. S2 on the Electric Annapolis Mobility Plan. What do we need from the budget team? What do we need to better understand this one?
This was just to make sure that everyone knew, along with that $2.975 million FTA grant comes up a city match of $525,000. So if we're adding the 2.975, we're also adding 525,000 city match.
I would have thought that the amount would highlight the city expense. So isn't that what we would be voting on?
We included everything down at the bottom. There's like different things but I can certainly take that out. But down at the bottom, we have a breakdown of what's bond funded, what's general funded, what's grant funded.
Go ahead.
It's just to back up a bit, because my amendment did not actually have any kind of monetary request in it, because I was really just putting a placeholder till I got sufficient information. I needed to better understand the CIP, and we dug into it a little bit in environmental matters. But bottom line, so I don't know where this $525K came from. I think we could work it out perhaps offline. My understanding was most of the costs were already absorbed in by staff time. But then it came up through some of the recent meetings that we may need to put out a separate RFI to get some additional information to address some of the parking concerns from Eastport and elsewhere.
I want to get Alderman Savage the information he needs to get this finalized, but I'm just going to be blunt that I'm going to keep us on a short leash on this one. So Ms. Guild, why don't you weigh in? Budget team can clarify if we need any additional info, and then let's move on.
Jackie Guile, Deputy City Manager. So the local ship match, the city's match, would be in staff time. That's what we put in the budget. It's not asking for any revenue for that project. And then we were going to put out an RFI for operators. That doesn't require any money to do that, for me to put it out in RFI and gather that information. The other study I believe you were referring to is you thought, as you explained it to me, that you were going to try to gather more information about routes, types of vessels, passenger use, landings, and that sort of thing, akin to what the county is doing before they even start their RFP for the design build of their vessels.
That's right. And so that part of it, we don't have funding.
No, the grant cannot be used for studies. It can only be used for up to 2 vessels, the design build of up to 2 vessels, landing improvements, and charging infrastructure, that if we go hybrid, we don't need any charging infrastructure on the dock anymore.
Okay, well, I'll circle up with staff about this too.
Mr. Chairman, this amendment is not properly marked.
Yeah, I think that's
This
right.
amendment appears to be for the hybrid ferry. And this would be putting money to the hybrid ferry.
No.
Which
Alderman Savage has
doesn't have
said
any
that
money.
his intention was for it to be budget neutral.
Yeah.
So.
Correct, but there's been, so I'm concerned about anything that would be in this, an amendment to the budget, which is not revenue-oriented, but rather affecting the decision of the mayor to move forward on the hybrid ferry. So I don't even know why this is listed.
But it's not.
We're going to move on. We're going to move on. That you're both allowed to put in whatever amendments you want. The point of this meeting is to make sure that we're clear on what the amendments are. Everybody has enough information. If we all hate it, we can vote it down later. If we all love it, we can vote for it later. We have the information we need. We're going on to the next one. S5.
For the record, I have no idea what this amendment's for.
It has no monetary impact, is what I got, and so that's all I need to know. S5.
To be clear, it does have a monetary impact. We just heard there's a local match of $500,000.
I just said my intention as I submitted had no dollar amount. I don't know where that dollar amount came from. I did not have that in my list of amendments, so I don't know. That's I want to get with staff and figure it out, but that was not my intention.
Okay, let's move on.
So S5. The note here is just amendment not required. Is it, can you explain why?
Which line, I'm sorry?
S5, it's line 14.
Thank you.
For this one, it's just a text amendment, and since we didn't submit the CIP budget in full, like by document in the ordinance itself, we just submitted the master listing. We don't have to submit every single text change as an amendment, so this shouldn't require amendments.
Which one are we on?
In past, we have voted on those, so I'd just ask, we can keep this as it is, but let's move it over to the exempt.
Which one are we on?
We are on your S5.
Oh, this isn't needed anymore anyway.
It's not needed at all? Okay, then great. We'll strike it. Beautiful. S3. This one, I don't know what you were trying to do here, Alderman Savage. If the budget team wants to start us off with, that's fine, but I feel like we all needed some more explanation on it, so.
Well, yeah. I gave explanation in my list of amendments, I thought pretty thoroughly on all these. But to reiterate, what I'm trying to do is get down to our 10% target. I know it's not a hard target for our debt capacity limit. And I don't know, without getting assistance from Davenport, the dollar amount of that actual, what that would look like. Would we need to push projects out as far as their start date? what are some scenarios as far as how we could get down to that 10%? Is it doable? That's the only thing I'm trying to get at. It's certainly just a policy debate as far as whether or not, how hard we should be trying to get down to that 10%. We're exceeding it quite a bit, and that's the only thing I was trying to get is some kind of scenario from Davenport, what that would look like, how we could do that.
Yeah, so touching on this, so we only exceed the 10% starting in 2029. Everything in that point is hypothetical. And so when you're looking through that debt capacity analysis, there's a lot of assumptions made in that analysis. So there's, first of all, in 2027, I don't have it pulled up right in front of me. I believe we only really get up to 7.8%, then it grows to 9, and then it grows to 10.6 in like 2029. In 2027, there's an assumed 15% or $15 million let related to prior approved, issued but unauthorized. In 2028, there's an assumed $15 million let from prior approved, authorized but not yet issued. So like there's a lot of assumptions in that number. So while it's an analysis to show you over time, I wouldn't necessarily get extremely hung up on this 10.63 number because it's extremely hypothetical in the sense that you're gonna issue all of these bonds that you have like authorized and like there's a lot that, and it doesn't happen until 2029. And so the debt capacity analysis by nature is actually to inform you that we are managing in those guardrails. And so to try to say, hey, I want to manage the guardrails below 10% would actually be counterproductive to what the nature of those guardrails are, because it's a 10% policy target up to a 12% ceiling. And so you're managing within that arc. And so with all of those hypothetical scenarios, you're showing and demonstrating that we're not subjecting the city to undue risk. To say that I want to operate below that limit would actually be creating a scenario that is underexposing the city to debt. And so sitting within that limit is actually what is the advisable amount. And so seeing it come above and then come back down is actually a good trajectory. And that's what the demonstration there is actually supposed to be from Davenport.
I understand it quite well. I've seen it for 9 years now as far as this Davenport presentation. But I mean, I hear you as far as hypothetical, but our budget policies are not hypothetical. We have these targets for a reason in our policies, right? And so those correspond to these debt ceiling calculations and forecasts that are put together by Davenport. So I guess it boils down to, I don't need to have a policy debate with you on this. What I'm asking is for my amendment to move forward, can I get some kind of estimate from Davenport or finance office as far as how to achieve these targets? That also is a hypothetical, but let's explore that. How much of our planned capital investment bond funding would we have to reduce in order to get down to that 10%?
Yeah, so
or to push back? And that's the scenario I'm looking at. I don't think we're going to sort it out today. So the question would be, can Davenport get that, or you guys get that for me?
But is your question to only reduce 2027 to do that, or because what's causing it is actually out year funding? So it's like, it's the stacking of addition. So it's like, it's multi-year. So are you asking like for multi-year adjusting, or are you asking for just for 2027, I want to see a number that then pulls the entire balance down?
We don't need to bog down this meeting anymore. I can circle up with you afterwards about exactly what I'm looking for.
Okay. I want to clarify before we move on from that subject. Certainly, any alderperson could ask for what projects could be postponed to bring out year spending below the 10% cap in those out years, and that's a fair question. Although there's so many variables at play, I think it would be difficult to answer with any sort of certainty other than just hypotheticals. But I want to be clear that the suggestion that the policy would not be complied with is a misstatement. The policy is to target 10%, with a cap at 12%, it's not to aim to be less than 10%. And so certainly, encourage an answer to the question of how could we time projects so that we're always staying under 10%? But just want to clarify, just want to clarify the mischaracterization that it's a violation of policy to go over 10% and be between 10 and 12. Alderman Huntley, I just want to point out we have 55 minutes for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I think we actually, that was our last one on capital, unless anybody has any other ones to bring up, which actually I do. So we're basically we're actually in advance, really, of where we need to be. But also, yes, I really agree with your point. If the goal is to be at 10%, then we should expect that in some years we're a little bit above 10% and some we're a little bit below. So with that, we've gone through the ones that finance staff has marked as needing some additional information. I have two that I put forward that I have not, frankly, done my due diligence on and need a little bit more info. I want to make sure if anybody else has that on the capital fund, on the capital amendments, that they have the opportunity to go first. If anybody else has anything they need to work through, get a more precise estimate. All right, now I will ask you to come up here, Director Vogel. Sorry, I got a question for you. On the H5 and H6, I put my best estimate of funding for these. One is ensuring that Acton Cove Park is shovel ready. So this is something that we're expecting to have grant funding for, but we don't have the grant funding yet. And I just want to make sure that if we need anything additional so that when the grant funding does come in, we can absolutely get immediately started on it. I think we talked about this the other day, but I wanted to make sure it might be able to be withdrawn. Do you mind coming up?
Okay, I'm not sure I can answer your question in terms of the details of how much design is left to do and how much funding we have. I'd have to get back to you.
Okay.
Is that really the question?
Yeah, basically, yeah, I think that's more or less the question. Do we need more city money so that all of the design can be completed before we receive the grant money, so that when we receive the grant money, we can immediately start construction?
I'll look into that.
Okay, but I got one other thing for you, which is I might end up withdrawing this, but we had previously talked about undergrounding service within the historic district. We had a CIP to do a bunch of planning on that, and we're kind of at the point where we've done the design, but we don't have the construction money. And my question is just, would it be helpful to have a relatively small additional pot of funds to keep up the effort on that and on finding grant money for it? And if so, what should that money look like in terms of where we should put it and how much of it there should be?
It sounds like a good idea to have a consultant help us figure that out. I don't know what kind of a firm would do that kind of thing.
Or how much, yeah.
Or how much it would cost, yeah.
Okay, I will consider withdrawing that one, but thank you. Okay. Yeah, you got something on it, Smith Brown? Go ahead.
Yes, so when you refer to undergrounding, are you talking about electrical, like what are you referring to?
Oh, yeah, utilities, electrical, telephone, that kind of thing, yeah.
Have you looked outside of the scope of the historic district at all? Because this is actually a concern across the city, and I think a lot of our residents have brought this to our attention.
Well, I've looked enough in the historic district to know that it's really expensive to do it on even one block. We've gotten to the point of, we've spent money on, actually, I think it might have been some state money, but we spent some on the design and basically did enough to realize this is astronomical in cost. So
ultimately, I can add information. You're talking about undergrounding electrical lines, right?
Because is that BGE as well? Do they have the responsibility?
So just to let me give you a data point. So to underground East Street, which is not a long street, it's from the Capitol basically to the Naval Grounds, 2-3 blocks, $5 million. And that's while it's already going to be torn up to bury water and gas lines. And that's why we were trying to get funding, $5 million of funding for the electrical component while it's torn up to do the BG&E portion of the one and the, which is gas, and the city portion of plumbing, they were going to also try to do electrical, $5 million for 3 blocks.
And so, Mayor Lippman, it sounds like you have thought about this a fair amount also. Are you of the opinion that an additional $20,000 is not going to make a lot of difference there? Okay. Well, with the idea that it would be to help us find some additional funding, but.
And so in seeking $5 million from other people's money, as Alderman Thorpe likes to say, this is connecting the state capital to the Bryce House, which has $24 million of the state money to revamp. So we thought we might get some state interest and couldn't get any takers in comparison for that kind of money. So again,
So I'm going to say, Ms. Flaherty, we can remove that one. I can withdraw that. I do want to circle back on the on H5 and see if we need any additional funding for that. But otherwise, I'm good on capital. So with that, I think we are through the main pots that we needed to go over. I see some additional colors in the fees and fines. Do you guys want to go through fees and fines? I mean, I was kind of thinking we wouldn't end up with time for that, but we could jump in on it.
Darren Johnson, FC 14. There's a note to increase the amount to $45 a day for the daily fee. Do we want to increase the weekly amount as well? Because there's a weekly amount attached to this fee.
Yeah, I believe that recommendation from the Finance Committee was at the suggestion of Deputy City Manager Guild, so I might ask her to come and weigh in on that. FC 14, which is to increase the main mooring field daily fee to $45.
The budget recommends an increase from 35 to 40, and the Finance Committee discussion was to go from 40 to 45.
Yeah, and I think the budget does not, well, maybe you can just jump in before I start speculating.
Okay. It's exactly what Alderman Thorpe has said, that the Finance Committee recommended a further increase to $45. Now, the mooring balls have not increased in cost for over 10 years, and we are well below market if you look at up and down the East Coast. So the harbor master at first was not enthused, but now when she's thought about it, she's like, you're right, they haven't increased, everybody else charges more. It's an increase in revenue when we aren't able to have people on slips right now. So it could be helpful during city dock construction.
And I think the question, sorry, from Darren was, this is framed in terms of an increase in the daily rate, but there's a weekly rate as well.
Right.
And so right now, if we don't change the weekly rate commensurate to this, essentially, a weekly rate, people
It's
are
times 7, 45 times 7 then.
Yeah.
Right, whereas right now, there's a little bit of a cost break. If you lease the mooring ball for an entire week, you get a little bit of a cost break. And that is true also of the amendment. There's a little bit of a cost break with it. So you either pass both increase and the weekly rate, or just one or the other.
Yeah, so I have the numbers in front of me. The increase from 35 to 45 would be $10 a day. Right now, the weekly rate is $210, which to your point, Ms. Gall, would be a savings of about $35 a week.
Right.
So I think the answer to your question was we should raise the weekly rate $70, 7 times 10 to $280, and that's a great catch.
So let's just add that as an addition to this amendment, that we would also raise the weekly rate, as Alderman Thorpe just said. Thank you. So when we go through this straw poll, we're really talking only about the operating, recurring, the one-time, and the capital. We don't need the fees and fines and the exempt to go through it. So that was why I was thinking we didn't necessarily need to go through all of those today. What is the budget team's preference? Do you guys want to work through remaining questions on those 3 pots today, or you want to save us all for another time? And I'm sorry, before you answer, it looks like Ms. Buckland wanted to answer.
Well, I know at least for myself, we've got some where we explicitly have questions, because for all of these, they're going to have to actually write up what the final amendment is. So being able to get that information, I think is important. So we've got some where it looks like we have some overlap. So clarifying, are we writing up two things? Are we writing up one thing? And then we've got these others where it's just like we have questions. So one of them we've dealt with, but there's some others. And if you guys want to go ahead and.
So let's start working through these now, recognizing they're not as time sensitive. And when we get to 4:25, which gives us a half hour at the end, we'll put a pin in this.
Okay, so our 1026 fees, we have 2 duplicates. So we need to know if you want to combine them, but also amounts were not provided for the specific increases you want to increase them by. FC 13 and H11.
Yeah, and I'll say, so one thing about this is H11 says both Rec and Parks and Harbor Master. We found out we are not allowed to do that for Harbor Master, so certainly as we combine this, it would be only relevant to Rec and Parks. Is Director Johnson still here? Yeah. So maybe we could, when she's ready to come back, just get a recommendation from her on what this could look like.
Okay, so do you want to withdraw H11?
Sure, yeah, we can withdraw H11. Yeah, have it just be FC 13. Sorry to call you back in. We're talking about a Finance Committee recommendation to increase fees for Rec and Parks for non-residents while potentially decreasing them for residents. We don't have a dollar figure on that, and we're looking for your recommendation on it.
Good afternoon, Rosalind Johnson, Director of Recreation and Parks for the City of Annapolis. For the record, so fines and fees, we currently have a difference between the two, between residents and non-residents. And we could probably check and look at the percentage of residents versus non-residents. And that's certainly something we could do. I would venture to say we're probably about 60% residents, 40% non-residents, of course, depending on what we're looking at, because we do serve a lot of people who are in Anne Arundel County, but not in the city limits.
And so, I'm sorry, did I hear you correctly just now that the fees are already differentiated?
The fees are currently already differentiated. If you want to rent a meeting room at Pitt Moyer, there's a resident fee and a non-resident fee. If you want to have a membership, there's a resident, non-resident fee. In years past, we've asked to increase the non-resident fee, and that was denied. So it's usually about, depending on what the cost is, it's about a couple of dollars to $20 more an hour if we're looking at room rentals.
So maybe Alderwoman O'Neill, you want to jump in? Yeah.
Yes, please, thank you. Our discussion was to increase the non-resident fees, but not to decrease the resident fees. We were going to maintain the residence fees because it's already based on that as a base fee, but we wanted to increase slightly by a percentage the non-resident fees in order to help add to their revenue budget so that we could in future years, use more of that revenue budget for programming at Parks and Rec.
Sure, you're right, I apologize. I was getting the Finance Committee recommendation confused with my recommendation. So if we were going to increase the fees for Rec and Parks for non-residents, do you have a recommendation for what that should look like? And do you want to tell us now, or would you rather get back to us with a number?
Well, we want to look at it across the board, and I wouldn't just want to say a set percentage rate. We'd want to look at our usage for certain things. For some, if we could increase it and we have 2 people, that's not going to make a huge impact. So I would recommend that you allow us to look at the numbers in particular and then make that decision. We're looking at summer camps too, though. So, is that something that the council has an appetite for? We do try to allow Annapolitans to register first for summer camps and then open it up to the greater area, but that's something as well. We currently just have it's about $25 difference per week, about $25 difference per week or per camp session or so.
So I think, at least without speaking for the whole council, the Finance Committee definitely does want to see that. So if you wouldn't mind just working with the budget team on what you think the most appropriate numbers are, then
Absolutely.
I'm happy to defer to you.
And is that on field rentals as well for resident, non-resident? Because currently for field rentals, nonprofits, we charge nothing for field rental.
I'm going to say, since we didn't talk about that, let's leave that out of the discussion for now. But,
Okay.
Yeah, because I think we were thinking more for individuals, right? For an individual, whether they're resident or non-resident, we weren't thinking about nonprofits that may be residing in the city or not. But so that just feels like an additional complicating dimension. But might be a good idea anyway.
We were put on hold, I think about 3 years ago. We had a set cost and all that was put on hold.
I want to keep us moving along, but if you wouldn't mind just, I'm sorry, Alderman Smith-Bowden, you got something on this?
Sure, yes, just quite quick. Thank you for everything you do for our city.
Yeah.
Where does the conversation go? And obviously, maybe not today because we're talking about money, but where does the conversation go? But this does tie directly into funding with extending hours at our Pitt Moyer Center to meet or be in line with other gyms in the Anne Arundel County area.
I'm sorry, Alderman Smith-Brown, I got to tell you, that's
I said,
unrelated to.
Where does that conversation go? I said.
Yeah.
That was a
Where does
question.
it
Yeah,
go?
where does that? How do we fit that into the larger conversation? That's what I asked. Like, where does that go?
Can I just ask you to shoot that question to the director as a follow-up?
So that's what I'm asking. Is that
That would be a
is that
budget
the best?
increase. I do want to share that because we're not currently funded to stay open beyond the current hours that we're open.
Okay, that's what I was asking. How do we fit that into the conversation of the grander scheme of things? So I will send that or follow up with you because this was brought up months ago, but I'll follow up with you to have that discussion. Thank you.
2 points. One, technical, in order to start the 5 o'clock meeting on time, we've been asked by our IT department, the media department to finish at 4:45 to give them 15 minutes. They normally like a half an hour, but we're squeezing them. I thought squeezing them to 5 minutes was enough. They want 15. So if we extend past 4:45, it means we're not starting the 5 o'clock meeting on time. The second, out of order, but I'll take prerogative, I want to share a press release that went out while we were meeting about the Juneteenth Festival, including other events. The Juneteenth Festival is taking place from 1 to 9 o'clock on Juneteenth at the Bates Athletic Complex. Actually, just want to make sure I got the date right. It's following the parade, which is the 20th, so I corrected myself. So on June 20th, the festival is on. We had some hiccups earlier in planning this week, but our team from multiple city departments came together to resolve those challenges. I also want to acknowledge Bishop Coates, who was patient in working with us to ensure our shared interest in the success of this festival. I'm happy to report that the festival will go forward, and I look forward to seeing everyone on the 20th.
It's exciting stuff.
Thank you.
It is.
Thank you.
All right, so with this new information that we want to wrap at 4:45, I think we need to skip over the rest of the fees, fines, and exempt, so that I think all the questions the recommendations, all the questions I am seeing are on recommendations from the Finance Committee, so I'm happy to just circle up with you guys on those fees and fines and make sure we get you what we need. With that, the last part of our discussion was around the pay-fors. So we're going to give the budget team a bit of a heads up and then take us to something else briefly. So what I think we need to know in the next couple minutes is how far apart are we on pay-fors and spends after what we just did? So with that said, I'm going to take us back to process real quick in the hopes that you guys can answer that question for us in a few minutes. So taking us back to the very first thing we talked about, just one point that I forgot to bring up earlier. I think with this process, it's even more imperative that we not go too off the walls with new amendments on the day of June 1st. And so my suggestion that I want to float to all of you is that we all agree, and we'd probably vote on it at the beginning of the meeting on June 1st, that we not debate any amendments that are not part of our list without a supermajority of the council agreeing to debate. So we would adopt a rule at the beginning of the June 1st meeting, and we'd say, all right, normally anybody can bring up a change and they just need a second, but in this case, we would need 6 members of the council to agree to debate on it. So I want to throw that on the table, hear what folks think about doing that for June 1st. Alderman Thorpe is
You say
going.
6 members?
Yeah, I suggested supermajority, as in 2/3.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. To debate it.
To debate it, right. And then ultimately if we get 6 people to debate it, it would be standard, subject to our normal threshold of passing, but the idea is that it keeps us from getting derailed, right? We see initially that everybody wants to talk about it. It's for a good reason.
The alternative would be that we agree no more amendments.
I think that's something we could do. I'm trying to give us a little bit of an out on this.
Okay.
Mayor Lippman, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, you're both right. We want to minimize new amendments, but things have come up so I think we need some grace. And so I think having some recognition, if we want to add hypothetically $12,000 to add in fireworks for Juneteenth 2027, we might want to still consider that. That is not in the budget.
Can I second that? No, I'm just
What's
kidding.
that?
Just kidding.
Didn't hear what you
I
said.
said I could second that.
Thank you. So, and I know Alderman Smith Brown had some.
Sure.
You want to go next?
Thank you, Mayor Lippman. So is this process similar to what has been done before, where there had to be a supermajority to bring up any amendments, or is there even a laid out process? Is this just fluid based off of who currently is the chair or leading that meeting at the time? How does that get done?
So we still have our rules that apply. So what we're discussing now is if we want to essentially amend the process so that we are efficient. So there's that. I do think if we're going to be discussing new amendments, introducing on the day of is a horrible situation.
Yeah.
And so I think we should be able to agree to ourselves no day of, and obviously the sooner the better. So if we want to have a category of emergency amendments and create some deadlines, we're obviously smarter now than we were whenever this process started.
I would agree fully to that. I do not agree to making it a supermajority of some sorts, because then you're kind of limiting what the natural voice of democracy of our powers are. So I do appreciate that.
Wait, I'm confused. I want to make sure that I hear what you just said, Alderman Smith Brown, because it sounds like Mayor Lippman said we shouldn't do it at all, and you said you agree we shouldn't do it at all, but you don't like the idea that we should have a supermajority to debate it. And so that sounds to me like saying I like the more restrictive option. I didn't understand what you just said.
I just want to clarify, I didn't say we should not do it at all. I said we should have the option to bring up some emergency category of amendments. We should try to constrain ourselves. We should not do it on the day of. But between now and the day of, I think we should have some time, whether it's next week, to get those final amendments proffered so that it can be reviewed by finance and law and the city manager's office.
Yeah, I'm really trying to strike a balance here of just saying anything outside of the list of amendments that gets distributed would require 2/3 to even debate it.
Well,
So-
we can just respect each other. The point is that if we're all in the know of what we're saying today and we have a priority list set before, we don't even need to set those parameters, because we should, unless something isn't of emergency, we should just let it be what it is and respect the time frame that we have. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that we need to set those strict rules. No, we're.
Alderman Smith Brown, do you think it's fair to say if you have any remaining amendments, self-discipline among all of us to keep it really tight to things that actually came up, in the last couple of weeks since we had, and then May 27th, which is Wednesday, to submit them, however Harry's planned to submit it, and then we can get some feedback by the 29th from Finance and Law to process them.
There's a dire situation in those 3 days leading up to, we would change it, but absolutely, I think that's reasonable.
So, yeah, it gives us 6 days, factor in the holiday, to get in those last few things. Friday gives 2 days for department, again, 1 or 2 from each of us at most type of thing, maybe even less. And then we vote the following Monday.
Alderman Savage has something to add.
And that sounds good to me. But just to tend to agree with Alderman Smith Brown, I don't really like the idea of supermajority. I don't know, we might need to ask the city attorney if we decide to end up changing our own procedures too drastically, because the code does, we have our own procedures in default to Robert's rules. If we're talking about having something else that is related to an actual binding legislative vote, I think we'd have to be really clear on if we can just have ad hoc procedures or not. The resolution is not binding, it's guidance, and we should absolutely adhere to as much as we can, but I like the flexibility that the mayor brought into it, and I think we're all just have to, and we have already committed to be reasonable with this, and yeah, I think we could all move forward in a reasonable way.
Well, I'm happy to be the optimist on it, that we're all going to move forward in a reasonable way. I wanted to tie our hands into being reasonable, but I hope that you guys prove me wrong. Alderman Thorpe seems to have one last thing on this, and then let's jump over to the pay-for side.
I do. And it applies to amendments, and it applies to our process. And I'd like to make sure I get the Director of Finance's attention as he's putting a finer point on other budget items. I want to applaud this budget process, as you have done, Mr. Chairman, on several occasions, and how the mayor's budget has used the one-time use money. We've competed everything in the budget, and I think it's been exceptionally responsible budgeting. The discussion we've heard today may open up the additional significant savings of expenses. And we've also talked about additional expenses to add to it. I would like to amend our process, and I intend to introduce amendments to actually cut spending and compete cutting spending with some of the additional expenses that we make. I'll have to work with the Director of Finance and the mayor as to what the ramifications of that would be, where that money would go, contingencies, reserves, cutting taxes, whatever. But I think as a city council, we should, as we create these two sets of lists now that we look like we have some, if we did go down this path of not funding billets that are not going to be filled, that we should have an amendment that says, and I would actually perhaps propose 8 amendments that says cut $250,000 expenses, cut $500,000, whatever, maybe increments of $250 or whatever. And I think we should seriously look at the opportunity to cut overall expenses and compete that with any idea of additional expenses.
No, I love it. I do want to be mindful of the time and make sure we have enough to get to this pay-for discussion, but wholeheartedly agree with you. That's a great idea.
Do I?
No. All right. How are we looking? So, as I put in my email last night of this part of the meeting, is just for us to take a hard look now that we've got our amendments narrowed down and say, how far apart are we between what we want to spend and the pay-fors that have been identified? So my hope is that we can have something of an estimate of that. I know it's probably not going to be perfect, but give us a sense of how much more we might need to do.
Yeah, Ms. Turner, can you please go to the key and summary tab? So we've created this tab now just for folks if they need to be able to reference back the color coding scheme, the color keys there, and now this amendment summary is also here too. So it's broken down into 2 sections. You've got your budget summary, which is going to be really your operating, where we've captured our pay for amounts. And so where this number is coming from is really that exempt tab. You're going to see that there's about $2.5 million of negative monies coming in, meaning really additional funding offset against base budget or recurring expenses of $3 million, and then additional one-time funds. So for this budget right now, we're still about $851,000 in the hole. I do want to acknowledge that there was the one item that we moved to the exempt budget that Alderman Huntley and I still just need to have continued discussion on around vacancy savings. So that item is currently marked as 0 and not pulling forward into the pay-fors. And then for the capital budget funding amendments, we still need to, I want to caveat that these numbers we're still like, based on the discussions that we were having, still moving stuff around. But what we want to be able to do is articulate where we see additional funding related to bonds, general fund, PAYGO, grants. The reallocating bucket really should just be moving money around. So I think ultimately we are expecting that'll go to zero, right? Once we get all of our numbers kind of in the right spots, and then the TBD is us still figuring stuff out. So as we continue to move stuff around, you'll see that table get fixed, but we've been live changing here, so it's not fully fleshed, but this is what we want you guys to be able to see as we move forward, is the pay for is recurring one time. So again, on an operating side, currently need to find an additional $851,000, and then on the capital budget side, that we'll have a better picture for you once we get through the information a little bit more.
On the capital side, it sounds like it's about $1 million, right? It's 2 million minus that 1 million that we're reallocating? Yeah. I just watched Ms. Turner do it.
It's $1 million, then it's dependent on that 525 match as well.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, thank you. But Buckland, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I just, in some sense, like the two things to hear is that if you accepted absolutely everything that's on the table, with the exception of this one item, right, here's what the gap is. But keep in mind, you might not actually accept every single item either. So just with that as backdrop to what you were gonna talk about.
And we do need to look through the list and make sure that there isn't any commingling of funds. So as we continue to evaluate if there's enterprise fund specific amendments or anything like that, we would need to parse those out individually, because we wouldn't want to show pay-fors from an enterprise fund paying down base budget amendments, because that would be inappropriate commingling. So we will make this summary make more sense as we look through the list.
Go ahead.
Am I the only one that doesn't fully understand what he just said? If I am, I won't ask any questions. If I'm not,
If you don't understand, you should ask the question.
so and I was having a hard time hearing you, actually. If you could explain in where are we, to the specific question that Alderman Huntley asked, are we looking for money, or do we have extra money? I don't understand what you said.
Okay, is there a specific piece?
If you could walk across line 14 and tell, and define what those numbers mean.
Yes, so the first one, the negative 2,534,000, that's what we're qualifying as our pay-fors. Those are dollars that have been found.
Okay.
Additional revenue, if you will. I don't want to call it revenue. It's money that has been found, cuts or otherwise, potentially revenue as well. Those are offsets. The next column over are the recurring numbers, meaning base budget additional amendments. So monies that have been added into base budget, so $3 million, assuming all those have been accepted. And then the one-time fees are then the tab. So Ms. Turner, if you could actually flip through the tabs, if you go into the operating recurring tab and scroll down. So, hello? Oh, that $3 million number is just simply pulling from this H41. It's the sum of all of the budgeted revised amounts for the entire column there. And then if you go to the one-time tab,
Got it.
if you scroll down, it's the total of all of the budget revised amounts for one-times. And then if you go to the exempt tab, the pay-fors are the total of all of this H column for the exempt tab.
One of the pay-fors that was being proposed was saving $4 million from the vacancy. So why isn't the minus 2.5 show?
Can you scroll up, Ms. Turner? Scroll up to the vacancy savings one. And so I tried to touch on this and I just was mumbling through it. It's marked as TBD, so therefore there is no amount to pull, and that's because Alderman Huntley and I needed to continue discussing. We have no amount to put, so therefore it's coming in as zero.
Got it.
Didn't hear that answer.
They don't have, he hasn't validated the $4 million. And
Okay, so in this
And I'll tell you,
number,
it's
it's
definitely
zero.
less. Yeah, it's assumed to be zero, but it's also definitely less than $4 million.
Right, so say it was $1 million, then 2.5 million would go to 3.5 million.
Correct. Can you put negative 1 million there, please? And now go back to the summary tab. And now we are the other way.
And that would be my amendment. To begin with.
Please mark him as co-sponsor.
And then below that, the 2 million, that's the capital budget.
We need to refine those numbers just because we're live updating those, and since there's so many more buckets, let's give us a chance to fix those.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate you taking the time to go through that again.
Yeah, Alderwoman O'Neill has a question.
Thank you. It's less of a question. Looking at this number is really important, but also keeping in mind that we only went through a fraction of the actual amendments and discussed them. There were ones that either were possible duplicates or they had questions on. There are a lot of other amendments, and I encourage all of us to be reaching out and talking to our colleagues prior to the June 1st date to find out more about each of those, because we didn't have time to go line by line today. In years past, we have gone line by line, so we all had a really good idea of the basis behind amendments, but there are quite a few that are pretty complex.
That's great. I agree. The way I thought about it was that we would have the opportunity to really go line by line and argue over them, as it were, on the first. But yes, I mean, to some extent, you need some level of knowledge to know how to rank it. But that's also part of why we decided to go with this relatively compressed ranking system, in that you might not have enough information to know whether you want to put 60 points behind something or 5 points, but you should hopefully have enough information at this point to know whether it's a 3, a 2, a 1, a 0, or a -1. I think we're pretty much wrapped.
So, good. So Madeline will be very happy with us in terms of timing. Thank you, Alderman Huntley, for leading the discussion and organizing thoughts, and thank you, Deputy City Manager Buckland, for coaching and guiding Chairman Huntley as well, and of course the finance team and the whole finance team before us. Appreciate everyone's participation. I think we will just wrap up a few minutes early and just, oh, yes, Ms. Brown.
I just wanted to address Alderwoman O'Neill. I did get a response from the Director of Planning and Zoning. The $100,025 was the request. He was going to request $25,000 now to get us started with the pre-qualification steps so that the applicants could judge the completeness of their applications and plans before submitting. That was what the $25,000 was for. But because we're already in the end of May and, June, the end of June will be here, he just deferred that to the FY27 budget along with the $100,000. Also, it is not a recurring fee. The annual fee, he said, should be about $10,000. This is a one-time, the $125,000.
Got it. So, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So I just putting a fine point on it for the budget team. So all those ones about Department of Planning and Zoning AI should be condensed down to a $10,000 annual one, recurring one, and a $125,000 one-time one.
That is correct.
Beautiful. Thank you.
All right. Alderman Huntley, before we wrap up, do you want to just sort of summarize and reiterate where we are and what steps remain?
Thank you. Yep, I appreciate it. So rather than say all of the steps remaining, I think maybe it's more helpful to focus on just a couple that folks need to be aware of in the very near future, which are, if you have anything outstanding with your amendments, get it fixed ASAP. Talk to the budget team by, I don't know, let's say before noon tomorrow, like now. You need to do it now. And then tomorrow afternoon, the straw poll will get sent out. That will be just spends. You're only looking at the spends. You're not considering the pay-fors part of it. And you're ranking those on a scale of -1, 2, 3 across each one of these 3 buckets of money. I think that's kind of the what you need to know version of things. And then June 1st, we'll reconvene to vote on all those amendments. Yeah? Do you want to jump?
I have a question. What do you mean when you say the straw poll is going to be sent out tomorrow? You guys are going to be voting in an email?
No, we're not voting. We're not voting. We're definitely not voting. We're definitely not voting. Everyone is receiving a copy of the amendments to write down how they feel about each one, which is not an up or a down vote. It is their sense of how strongly they feel about it. It's definitely not voting.
Can I clarify? The purpose of it is not to vote on the amendments. The purpose is for us to gain feedback about what order we should put the amendments in for the actual voting. So which thing should we list first? Which thing should we list second? It is not to replace actual voting. It's simply an administrative information for us in how we order them.
My only concern is that you're sending it to the whole council. That's a council meeting. So I was wondering if it was any type of violation to the Open Meetings Act. That's all.
Yeah, so the intent was to send it just to each person individually. We would collect their individual information and we'd aggregate that on the back end.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, Vicki, you've done a nice job of explaining that, and it does not involve either a group email chain with any ongoing discussion. It's just an individual administrative step that's being taken and is not a substantive debate or discussion about any policy or any particular amendment. And so, but thank you, Regina, for clarifying that. But yes, I think you've described it well.
Any other points, Alderman? All right, I think that concludes this discussion. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The agenda has been completed.
Very good. Is there anything else for the good of the order? All right, very good. Hearing nothing, the session is adjourned. And I will remind my colleagues